She asked for a divorce with no tears, no regret. Months later, she saw the photo that shattered her, and realized the truth too late. It ended long before she said the words. That thought would haunt Barbara forever, like the echo of a door closing just before the storm breaks. The apartment was silent, too silent. The kind that hums in your ears and unsettles your bones. Rain tapped the windows with maddening persistence, as if trying to warn him. When Barbara stepped through the door, his shoulders sagged under the weight of the day, his tie already loosened, eyes flickering in search of calm. He didn't find it. William sat at the kitchen table, her posture carved in stone. Arms folded, lips drawn in a thin line, not a trace of softness in her gaze. A single pendant light above her cast a stark circle around her, like she was waiting for a verdict, or delivering one. "Can we talk?" Her voice was low, unshaken. The air grew heavier. He nodded, and the door clicked shut behind him, though it might as well have been the gate of something deeper. This wasn't the first time they'd tiptoed toward these conversations, but this one carried the scent of finality. Something was off. Too calm. Too rehearsed. "I want a divorce," she said, and the words didn't flinch. No explanations. No pleading. No mention of therapy, or a need for space. Just the cold precision of someone who'd mapped her exit long before she spoke it aloud. Barbara blinked. Once. Twice. Then stillness. His pulse quickened, thudding inside his chest like fists against a locked door, but his face didn't betray it. He sat down slowly, cautiously, as though the wrong movement might shatter the moment into something irreparable. He studied her. Looking, hoping, for a sign that this was simply exhaustion speaking, that maybe tomorrow she'd wake up and laugh at this strange madness. But William didn't waver. Her stillness wasn't the fragile kind. It was the steady kind, resolved and detached. "I don't understand," he managed, his voice barely louder than a breath. "Is this because of something I did?" "No." She said it gently, like an apology she didn't owe. "You've been good to me. Always. A good father. A good partner. That's not the problem." "Then what is?" She looked away, just for a second, but it was enough. "Something in me shifted. I can't pretend anymore. I need to feel alive again, even if I don't know what that means yet." Barbara swallowed, hard. His throat had gone dry, the words catching before they formed. He wanted to reach for her hand, but didn't. Wanted to scream, but couldn't. "You remember the nights we didn't sleep when Nancy had colic?" he asked quietly. "Or how we danced in the kitchen when the power went out? The long drives to your parents' cabin just to see the first snow?" She blinked rapidly, but didn't speak. "I covered you with a blanket every time you fell asleep on the couch," he added, as if those gestures could still carry meaning. "I know." Her voice trembled, barely. He closed his eyes for a heartbeat. Then exhaled, long and slow. "If you're certain. I won't fight you. I won't make this uglier than it has to be. For the girl's sake, it has to be clean. Dignified." William looked like someone who had braced for battle and found no enemy. For the first time, she flinched, just barely, as if guilt had found its opening. "I spoke with Emily," she said, adjusting a strand of hair that didn't need fixing. "She's helping me through this." Emily. Barbara's stomach turned. William's childhood friend, now a family lawyer in Crest Hill. The sudden uptick in girls' nights. The veiled messages. It clicked together like a cruel mosaic. "You've already started planning this," he said, more to himself than her. "Haven't you?" She didn't deny it. The rest unfolded like a slow-motion crash. Legal separation. 90 days. Freedom to see other people during the interim, an absurd clause, spoken with clinical detachment. Barbara felt as if he were listening to someone else's life being dismantled. "What about the apartment?" he asked, trying to tether himself to logistics. "The girls? Nancy and Sarah need stability. I'll stay here, at least for now." "It makes more sense," William replied. "You should look for a place closer to your firm. Something manageable." "I'll never be a visitor in my daughters' lives," Barbara said firmly. "I want dinners with them on Wednesdays and Sundays." They need rhythm. They need to know they're still loved, by both of us. Of course, she said quickly, too quickly, as if she feared his voice might crack next and take her resolve with it. They discussed the car, the accounts, the dog, each word carrying the weight of years, being sliced into terms and timelines. She nodded along, her face composed but pale. Detached. Somewhere far away. At last, when the silence returned like fog, Barbara couldn't hold back. His voice, now rough and low, broke through it. Is there someone else? William looked at him then. Really looked. And for a moment, he saw her hesitate. She didn't answer. William didn't answer right away. Her eyes drifted toward the window, tracing some invisible horizon, as if distance might absolve her. It doesn't matter, she said at last, her voice quiet but not tender. This isn't about anyone else. It's about me, and a life I don't recognize anymore. For Barbara, that was worse than a confession. Worse than any affair. A betrayal unspoken is harder to forgive, it corrodes in silence. And he knew that tone, that faraway look in her eyes. He had lived beside her long enough to understand what she wouldn't say aloud. The truth hung in the air like smoke, suffocating but invisible. Still, he didn't lash out. No raised voice, no sarcasm, no bitterness, only the strain in his jaw and the weariness in his gaze betrayed the blow he'd taken. If you truly believe this is the path to your happiness, he said, his voice slow and even, then we'll do it the right way. But don't mistake grace for ease, William. Don't pretend this doesn't come with a price. Her head turned slowly, eyes narrowing slightly. There are 2 little girls upstairs who still think love means forever, he said. And whether you like it or not, your freedom echoes through their lives. For the first time since the conversation began, William faltered. Her lips parted, then pressed closed again. The certainty in her posture softened. Doubt crept in, but not enough to change her mind. It's too late, Barbara, she whispered. You know that. He said nothing. He simply rose from the table, his movements heavy, and walked to the bedroom like a man wading through grief. The room was dim, golden light spilling from the bedside lamp. He sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the photo frame next to it. A frozen moment, their vacation in Seabrook Bay. The 4 of them mid-laugh, wind in their hair, the sky behind them a brilliant, careless blue. That wasn't just a picture. It had been proof, once, of a life he believed in, a happiness that felt solid. Now, it was just a relic she seemed eager to forget. He returned to the hallway. His voice was flat, almost detached. Do you want me to go tonight? William shook her head. No. There's time. We can plan things over the next few days. He nodded. No point in pressing. He walked to the girl's room, quietly opened the door, and stood in the threshold. Nancy's foot had escaped the blanket. Sarah slept with her cheek against her palm, her hair tangled like seaweed. Innocent, untouched by the wreckage brewing just outside their door. Barbara stayed for a few minutes, then returned to the living room with a pillow under one arm. He sank onto the couch, avoiding her gaze. William lingered in the hallway. Her lips parted, as if to speak. Then she turned without a word and disappeared down the hall. That night, Barbara didn't sleep. His thoughts circled endlessly, what he missed, what he should have seen, what still might be salvaged. But beneath it all, a darker certainty was forming, this wouldn't be a clean break. She had no idea what her choices would set in motion. Morning came with cruel normalcy. The girls bounded down the stairs, laughing over a school project, completely unaware. William sat at the table, coffee in hand, her face composed, her smile automatic. As though none of it had happened. The familiarity of it all felt grotesque. Barbara cooked pancakes, flipping them one by one while trying not to look at her. He forced himself to laugh when Nancy told a joke. Replied softly when Sarah asked about their weekend plans. But inside, everything was burning. William chewed silently. Her answers came delayed, like echoes in an empty house. When the girls ran upstairs to change, Barbara seized the moment. We need to talk. About logistics. William gave a small nod. They moved to the couch. He'd spent the night listing out options in his head, calculating compromises. I'll look for a small place closer to the office. That'll cut down my commute. I'll be more Nancy-able that way. Fair, she said, almost with relief. Her approval felt oddly rehearsed. I want Wednesdays and Sundays with them. Non-negotiable. I need them to have rhythm. Security. Again, just a nod. No protest, no emotion. She had already played this scene in her mind. Probably for weeks. Then he broached the most delicate subject. Money. I don't want this to turn into a war over numbers, he said. The girls shouldn't be the collateral damage of two adults negotiating resentment. William's response surprised him. I don't want more than what's necessary, she said evenly. No lawyers, no tricks. Just enough to keep their lives stable. So they talked. Credit cards. School fees. Medical insurance. Dance classes, weekend soccer, birthday parties. They divided the details of a life that had once been shared, piece by piece. It was all so civil. So adult. And yet, with every item crossed off the invisible list, Barbara felt a sharp tug in his chest, like signing the pages of a story you never wanted to end. They moved on to the car. It was still in both their names, a lingering symbol of shared beginnings. William suggested keeping it, noting that Barbara would soon live within walking distance of his firm. He nodded. Practical. Sensible. Reasonable. But the car was more than transportation, it was their first real purchase together, the start of something once filled with promise. Letting it go felt symbolic in ways he couldn't quite say. Then came Emily's name again. William mentioned she'd lean on her, not just legally, but emotionally. The words were casual, but they struck like glass splinters. Emily, the friend who had suddenly become a guide through unfamiliar territory, who answered calls at odd hours and offered clarity William had never seemed to seek before. Barbara felt something rise in his throat, a quiet indignation. He bit it back. One flare of temper and she'd call him reactive. Emotional. Difficult. He'd be playing right into her hands. So he said nothing. Just nodded, like a man too tired to resist a current pulling him out to sea. When William got up to clear the dishes, Barbara retreated. He pushed open the girl's bedroom door with care. Inside, laughter bloomed like spring. Nancy was helping Sarah tie her hair into a sloppy bow, giggling as she declared, I want to be just like you. Barbara smiled faintly, then turned away too quickly. The tightness in his chest became unbearable. Back in the living room, he dropped onto the couch, burying his face in his hands. He didn't cry. He simply stopped moving, letting the stillness hold him together for a few fragile minutes. By the time William returned, he had composed himself. His voice, though soft, had an edge. We need to decide when to tell them, he said. William hesitated. Maybe in a few days. Once we've figured out the logistics. No. His answer was firm. They'll feel it. They'll sense something's wrong. Absences. Shifts. Closed doors. If we wait too long, it'll feel like we were lying. She paused, then nodded slowly. Next weekend, then. It gives us time to think of how to say it. Later that day, the girls went to the movies with their grandmother. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that made Barbara feel like an intruder in his own life. He opened drawers without thinking. Just something to do. Something to keep from unraveling. One drawer held an old notebook, spiral-bound, the cover creased. He'd used it for shopping lists, travel plans, scattered thoughts. On impulse, he opened to a blank page and began to write names. No plan. No reason. They came easily, casual acquaintances, women who had once smiled at him with a little more warmth than necessary. The school counselor. The woman who ran the used bookstore near his old office. A former colleague. Names with no weight, until his hand, almost without permission, scribbled one more. Kimberly. His sister-in-law. He stared at it. Then, with a swift motion, scratched it out. Letter by letter, blacking it out with firm, angry strokes. Not because it meant something. But because it could. And that terrified him. He closed the notebook and shoved it to the bottom of the drawer. It was stupid. Meaningless. A pathetic gesture. But it helped him breathe again. That evening, William returned from the supermarket, arms full of bags, a carton of the girl's favorite ice cream nestled among the groceries. It was the kind of thing she always brought home when she wanted their affection to come easily. Barbara watched her as she unpacked, her hands quick, her movements efficient, like everything was fine. Like nothing had shifted at all. "Everything okay?" he asked, his tone light but watching her carefully. She offered a small, strained smile. "Yeah. Just tired." He leaned against the counter. "We should talk about the rest. Chores. Expenses. Who takes care of what?" William exhaled sharply. "Are you keeping score now?" "I'm trying to avoid a mess," he replied, measured. "You work." "So do I. I'll keep covering the bills for now, but we need to divide things fairly." Her posture stiffened. "Don't act like you're doing me a favor." "It's not a favor," he said, more tired than angry. "It's survival." The argument didn't last long, but the air afterward was thick with unspoken words. They both walked away before it turned into something cruel. The next morning, Barbara woke before dawn. He made coffee and left the house without a word, determined to carve something of a future out of the fog. He visited 3 listings, talked to 2 agents, and by noon had signed for a small studio apartment 5 blocks from the firm. Nothing glamorous, white walls, narrow windows, a weak kitchen faucet, but it was a beginning. A controlled descent. 2 weeks until the move. When he returned, the house was dim again. William was curled on the couch with the girls, watching a movie. They looked like a family. He walked past them quietly, into the bedroom, and opened the closet. One by one, he folded his clothes into boxes. Shirts. Ties. Socks. All the ordinary things of a life being dismantled. It was strange, doing it without tears. As if the farewell had already happened somewhere else. As if the goodbye had started before he'd even packed a single shirt. William passed by the bedroom doorway. Her steps slowed, just for a moment. She lingered, as if the air between them might speak what she couldn't. But no words came. She continued down the hall, her figure swallowed by shadow. That night, while Barbara was scrolling through work emails, a message blinked onto his screen. An old college friend. The kind of person you don't hear from unless something big has happened. "I heard. Emily mentioned it. Sorry, man." The message was simple, even kind. But it landed like a stone. Barbara stared at it, then typed 2 words. "It's true." He switched off the light. And in the silence that followed, it struck him hard, he had been the last to know the story of his own life. William had already told her circle. Already laid the groundwork, built the scaffolding of a new life before the old one was even buried. He was still at the starting line, fumbling for breath while the race had already left him behind. They agreed on a day to tell the girls. Barbara refused to stretch the silence any further. The signs were already bleeding through. Nancy had begun asking questions, why he left early, why he came home when they were already in pajamas. Sarah had started waking up with bad dreams she couldn't explain. It was a Saturday. They sat in the living room, the 4 of them. Barbara took Nancy's hand. William held Sarah's. His voice was steady, but the weight of what he had to say pressed on every syllable. "I'm going to be living in a different place for a while," he began. "But nothing changes how much we love you. That's still forever. None of this is your fault." Nancy's eyes welled up. She looked down at their hands, her lip trembling. Sarah stayed quiet for a moment, then looked up. "Is it because you had a fight?" Barbara shook his head gently. "No, sweetheart. It's not a fight. Just some grown-up decisions that were hard to make." William added something vague about needing time to think, about what the future might hold. Her words were soft, but carried no conviction. Afterward, they pulled the girls close and held them for a long time. William led them upstairs, staying behind in their room while Barbara remained downstairs, sunk into the couch, unable to move. Something vital had slipped from his hands. And deep down, he feared it might never return whole. The next day, Barbara moved into his new apartment. A studio, modest, clean, blank. The walls smelled of fresh paint, and the space felt hollow, like a waiting room. He carried 2 suitcases, a small box of books, and a single photo frame with the girls' smiling faces frozen in summer. He unpacked quietly, trying to give the day purpose. When he stopped, the silence hit him. Not the peaceful kind, but the disorienting quiet of absence. No sound of bare feet on hardwood. No sleepy laughter. No William moving through the kitchen, humming under her breath. That night hurt more than the day she asked for a divorce. For the first time in 20 years, he lay in a bed with no warmth beside him. The ceiling above him felt vast, uncaring. The city outside went on, oblivious. Days passed. He kept busy, long hours at work, boxes still half unpacked, a kind of intentional inertia. Then, one evening, there was a knock at the door. He wasn't expecting anyone. When he opened it, William stood there. No coat. Her hair pulled back loosely. Her eyes were red and puffy, face drawn with exhaustion. She hadn't cried recently, but she had clearly cried for hours. She didn't say much. Just, "Can we talk?" Barbara hesitated, just a breath, then stepped aside. She walked in slowly, sat on the edge of the couch, and stared at the floor. Minutes passed. He didn't press her. Then she spoke, her voice barely audible. "There's someone. His name is Kenneth." Barbara didn't react. He'd suspected. Heard the name in whispers, saw it in the absences she didn't explain. He remained still. "I thought I was in love," she continued, eyes fixed on her knees. "He was kind. Smart. He made me feel seen. It started after a conversation with Emily, and then, somehow, we kept talking. We saw each other often. More than I realized." Still, Barbara said nothing. His silence wasn't cruel, it was simply all he had left. William kept going, her voice unraveling. "He said he'd leave his wife. That we'd start something new." I believed him. But after I filed, he vanished. Stopped replying. Treated me like a mistake. She finally looked at Barbara. "His wife found out. She has children too. She threatened to ruin everything." Barbara listened, face unreadable. William exhaled, long and unsteady. "Emily won't speak to me now. Kimberly told me I'd lost my mind. My coworkers whisper behind my back. I thought I had control of my life, and now I don't even recognize myself." Her voice cracked. "I was blind. And now everything's broken." She stopped talking. Her shoulders sank. The weight of what she'd done, what she'd gambled and lost, was finally settling on her. Barbara didn't respond right away. What could he say? There were no lectures left to give. No satisfaction in watching her unravel. He just stood by the window, arms crossed, eyes on the distant traffic lights flickering in the night. Because sometimes silence is louder than anger. William had come expecting something, absolution, maybe. Some small gesture of grace. She sat on Barbara's couch, shoulders curved inward, her voice fraying at the edges. She hoped he would say something. Anything. A word that might soften the sharp edge of her shame. But Barbara didn't offer comfort. He asked, quietly, "Do you still love him?" William faltered. I don't know," she said. Her voice broke. "All I know is that I'm ashamed." He rose without a word, went to the kitchen, and returned with a glass of water. He handed it to her, not as a kindness but as a formality. Then he sat beside her, composed and quiet, but with the weight of exhaustion behind his eyes. "I know what loneliness feels like," he said. "The kind that sits next to you in a room full of people. I understand the ache for something different, something new. But while you were chasing illusions, I was holding up what was left of the structure, for the girls. For their sanity." His voice didn't rise, but each word landed with force. "You didn't just break something between us. You shattered what I spent years building." William's breath hitched. Tears came, unrestrained this time. "I never imagined the pain would come back at me like this," she whispered. Barbara listened, unmoving. She talked about Kenneth, about the promises, the high hopes, and the bitter ending. She spoke of how he ghosted her, how his wife threatened to expose everything, how Emily had stopped taking her calls, how Kimberly had confronted her in fury. She confessed that she had lost control, that her life had spiraled into something she no longer recognized. And she wanted Barbara to save her from it. But he was already too tired. When she finished, when silence finally fell like dust between them, Barbara stood. "You have to go." William blinked. "What?" "I can't do this," he said gently. "I've got the girls. I've got my job. I've got 1,000 tiny pieces of a life to glue back together. I can't carry your pain too." She tried to resist. "Please, Barbara. I need someone." He didn't waver. "You chose to leave. And now you have to carry what that means." William stayed frozen for a second, her eyes wide as if waiting for him to take it back. But he didn't. Her hands trembled as she grabbed her bag. She walked toward the door with her head low, and when she turned back to look at him, guilt flooded her expression. He didn't follow her. 2 days later, she came back. She knocked, not with hope, but necessity. Barbara opened the door. "I left a code here. For one of my online accounts," she said, barely meeting his eyes. He let her in without a word. She walked to the bookshelf, scanning quickly. She found the notebook, his old one, where he used to jot thoughts, errands, ideas for vacations. She flipped through it distractedly, and then stopped. A list. Names. Some familiar. Some unknown. And then, near the middle, Kimberly. William's stomach twisted. She closed the notebook hard, turned slowly, and looked at him with fury flickering beneath her shock. "Are you serious?" she said, voice catching. "You made a list of women to date, including my sister?" Barbara didn't flinch. "Yes," he said. "I wrote that." Her mouth opened slightly. She was waiting for remorse, denial, anything. He gave her none. "And you know what?" he continued, voice calm but cold. "From the moment you walked out, I stopped owing you explanations." William stepped back. "This is low. You've been playing the noble victim while writing lists like a teenager." Barbara stepped closer, meeting her eyes without blinking. "You had an affair with a married man. Lied to me. Lied to our girls. Burned everything we built. And now you're upset over a list in a notebook?" She tried to speak, but he didn't give her space. "You always acted like I was some ethical statue, like I'd never make a wrong move. And now that I have a name on a page, suddenly I'm the villain?" Her anger flared. "You always think you're better than everyone else." "No," Barbara said, quieter now, but closer. "But I know this, you left. You don't get to dictate who I spend time with anymore. If I decide to date your sister, I will. You gave up that right the second you chose someone else." William went pale. Her lips parted, but the words wouldn't come. Tears filled her eyes, spilling over before her voice could follow. She snatched her coat, her hands shaking, and rushed out the door. Down the stairs. Crying. Not because of betrayal, there had been none. But because she was now witnessing the world she destroyed being rebuilt, without her. And she wasn't the architect. She wasn't even invited in. Months passed. Summer crept in. The girls were off school. William sat alone one evening, idly scrolling through her phone, not expecting anything to sting. Until she stopped. Kimberly's post. A photo at the lake. Barbara, the girls, and Kimberly, smiling. Nancy on his shoulders. Sarah holding Kimberly's hand. A moment that looked effortless. Happy. Whole. William stared at the screen as if it were a portal to a past she had thrown away. She didn't comment. Didn't like it. She simply lowered her phone and whispered to no one. "What have I done?"